One of the first major themes Gregg explores concerns the compelling evidence of ancient architectural ruins on Mars and the Moon, dating back approximately 50,000 years before present. He speaks in detail about geometric structures on Mars, noting right angles and square formations that defy natural erosion patterns, suggesting intelligent design. Gregg references lunar images, many of which NASA has heavily censored or pixelated, obscuring vast structures such as towers and pyramids. These anomalies parallel discoveries on Mars, indicating that extraterrestrial archaeological sites may be remnants of previous advanced civilizations. Gregg postulates that the inscriptions found at these sites may be written in recognizable ancient Earth languages, like Sanskrit, which would hint at a shared origin or lost chapter of human history. This idea challenges the orthodox timeline of civilization and raises intriguing questions about human migration and origins. He suggests that these civilizations might be our own ancestors from a prior cycle of human existence, destroyed by war and conflict, now hidden beneath layers of time and cosmic events. Delving into genetics, Gregg challenges mainstream evolutionary theory, emphasizing discoveries in human DNA that disrupt conventional narratives. He highlights the fusion event creating human chromosome 2, an occurrence widely accepted as evidence for a unique, intelligent intervention rather than natural evolution. Complementing this, he discusses chromosome 7 and its role in enabling human speech and music, abilities absent in closely related primates, despite sharing 98% genetic overlap. Gregg critiques the prevailing evolutionary model for its inability to conclusively trace human ancestry, noting many speculative or inferred connections. Instead, he suggests that our emergence as a species involves a blend of natural and deliberate forces. He supports this using perspectives from peer-reviewed scientific journals, aligning with more expansive views that incorporate patterns in genetics, indicating a directed complexity in human origins. Shifting to cosmology, Gregg outlines the evolving scientific understanding of the universe as a living, intelligent, and conscious entity, moving away from the earlier worldview of a cold and inert cosmos. He shares fascinating observations captured by the James Webb Space Telescope, such as galaxies using jets to evade cosmic threats actively. This suggests a self-regulating, responsive universe, imbuing reality itself with consciousness. He ties this to the human experience, proposing that as biological beings, we are not merely passive inhabitants, but active participants within this conscious whole. This expands the framework for understanding human potential, creativity, and our relationship to the cosmos, emphasizing that our consciousness reflects and interacts with a larger intelligent field, a theme consistent with ancient teachings and modern quantum physics. A significant portion of the discussion focuses on the current challenges posed by rapid technological advances, especially artificial intelligence, AI, brain-computer interfaces, and bioengineering. Gregg warns of the existential risk in relinquishing our humanness to technology, cautioning against the push to embed synthetic components within our bodies and minds. He argues that these developments, while often presented as progress, risk atrophying our natural cognitive, emotional, and physiological abilities through disuse. The conversation examines how corporate and governmental powers exploit technology to consolidate control, limit individual freedoms, and erode critical thinking and creativity. Gregg points to social media algorithms that amplify division, promote antagonism, and fracture social bonds using psychological exploitation. He emphasizes a spiritual dimension at play, describing it as an active struggle to suppress human divinity and self-expression for the sake of manipulation and domination. Braden's references various ancient religious and spiritual texts, such as the Gnostic Gospels discovered in Nag Hammadi and the Sumerian Kings List, highlighting their shared narratives about humanity's origins, purpose, and ongoing spiritual warfare. These texts propose that humans possess an innate divine spark, an aspect that grants us power beyond what created us, which has been systematically denied or obscured throughout history. He stresses that these traditions, often dismissed as heretical or mythic, contain practical wisdom about human potential and self-mastery, particularly emphasizing the transformative power of awakening the divinity within. Gregg challenges the dominant religious orthodoxies for suppressing this inner knowledge in favor of intermediary powers or dogma, encouraging listeners to explore these suppressed teachings to reclaim individual sovereignty. Gregg brings in a highly novel scientific perspective, viewing the human body as a sophisticated form of biological information technology. He explains that every cell functions like a circuit with transistor-like properties, collectively generating trillions of volts of electrical potential. The body is described as both a photon emitter and receiver, akin to a living, soft technology system interconnected with an intelligent field, storing and exchanging information through its DNA. This viewpoint aligns modern computing metaphors with ancient spiritual understandings, bridging science and mysticism. He notes that blockchain terminology, such as transparency, immutability, and distribution, can metaphorically describe DNA's role as the secure record keeper of human genetic history. The implication is that our bodies are highly evolved platforms, enabling us to interface with realities beyond physical perception, and denying this disrupts our ability to heal, innovate, and intuitively connect. A fascinating segment details Gregg's collaboration with the Institute of HeartMath and his promotion of heart-brain coherence techniques. He explains the biological discovery of specialized neurons in the heart that operate independently of the brain, facilitating a dynamic two-way communication. By intentionally focusing awareness on the heart, slowing the breath with longer exhalations, and cultivating positive feelings like gratitude, a low-frequency coherence can be established that boosts immunity, longevity, cellular regeneration, and mental clarity. This state also fosters deep intuition, creativity, and emotional resilience by bypassing the brain's ego-driven polarities. Gregg shares personal and cultural anecdotes, illustrating how this practice enables better decision-making, stress reduction, and empowerment. He underscores that this capacity for self-regulation and emotional mastery is unique to humans and offers a practical tool to counteract the destabilizing forces of modern life and technology. Throughout the dialogue, Gregg frames the contemporary crises in terms of an ancient spiritual struggle between good and evil, not necessarily religious, but profoundly existential. He defines evil as that which denies human divinity, repressing imagination, empathy, creative expression, and self-healing capabilities. Evil acts aggressively to fragment societies, control narratives, and isolate individuals from their innate power. Gregg emphasizes discernment rather than judgment in recognizing the forces and individuals who perpetuate this denial, noting many are unknowingly complicit or victims themselves. He insists that personal and collective awakening is the antidote, inviting listeners to cultivate love, creativity, and unified consciousness as pathways to transcend this deep-rooted conflict. Gregg critically examines mainstream climate narratives, acknowledging climate change as an undeniable fact, but challenging popular alarmist interpretations, especially those focusing exclusively on carbon dioxide. Drawing on geological evidence, he points out that Earth's climate has always undergone significant cycles, sometimes with much higher CO2 levels than today, often correlating with warmer and more lush periods. He discusses natural processes such as mantle dynamics, heating oceans from below, which drive climate shifts independent of human emissions. While admitting humanity contributes some greenhouse gases, Gregg contends that efforts to aggressively force climate targets insufficiently consider natural cycles and risk unintended consequences like excessive global cooling. He calls for balanced, science-based approaches grounded in respect for Earth's complex systems and warns against narratives that manipulate fear to advance control agendas. Gregg observes how social media and political systems exploit human vulnerabilities by amplifying division and identity politics. He explains that information silos created by algorithmic feeds isolate individuals into echo chambers that distort perceptions of reality, breeding distrust, conflict, and polarization. This phenomenon fractures families, communities, and nations, weakening social cohesion and making populations easier to control. He references Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals to illustrate intentional tactics that isolate and weaponize social groups, feeding cycles of victimhood and hostility. Gregg encourages critical self-awareness and compassion toward others ensnared in these dynamics, reminding that most participants are unaware and acting out of trauma or fear. He advocates for restoring social bonds through dialogue rooted in shared humanity rather than ideological tribalism. The conversation returns repeatedly to the power of individual imagination and creative expression as the foundation of human divinity and the means to resist dehumanizing forces. Gregg emphasizes that our thoughts, images, and feelings biologically influence our bodies and environments, enabling personal healing and transformation. He warns against outsourcing this power to technology or external authorities. Gregg encourages listeners to discern what affirms or denies their humanness, choosing behaviors and inputs that nurture empathy, creativity, and unity. He challenges us to live with integrity and love, releasing judgments and bitterness. In his own life, Gregg demonstrates this philosophy by embracing work as love made visible, finding meaning even in humble or difficult tasks. He concludes that embracing our fullest potential as compassionate, imaginative beings is the truest form of resistance and hope for humanity.